Hey tea heads, this is Don from Mayleaf, and in this video I'm going to be indulging in two First Pluck 2021 spring green teas from Sichuan province. These are very, very highly desirable. It's the first plucking of the year. If you want to know the difference between first pluck and first flush, because there is a difference, I'll put a link to a video that I've done already in the description below. So you only get one first pluck of the year. So this is the first pickings after the long winter dormancy period. They command a very high price, and oftentimes we find that you've got to be very, very careful, because if the terroir isn't exactly right, if the age of the tea tree isn't really, high enough, or if the variety is one of the more modern varieties and not these heirloom varieties, then you can pay a pretty price for those first plucks, but they lack the depth, the body, and more importantly, the length of finish that you're looking for in a high quality green tea. And oftentimes it's better for you to wait for the pre-Qingming, so before the 4th of April, like mid-March to beginning of April, and even green teas after April, so sort of up to sort of mid-April, can be excellent quality, and oftentimes better quality, in my opinion at least, compared with those very, very early spring picked teas, those first pluck teas. So we taste a lot, and we will only select the ones where the quality of the experience meets the expectations and justifies the price. And we have two teas from Sichuan province here. Sichuan tends to be one of the provinces that comes earlier to market than other provinces. And Sichuan is a province steeped in history. It's one of the first tea producing provinces in China. I often enjoy the sort of arguments between Yunnan and Sichuan as to where the birthplace of tea, which province is the birthplace of tea. They sort of argue with each other a little bit. Sichuan province has a long history, over 2,000 years of history in tea production, and it's often thought, especially with this tea right here, that Sichuan was the first province to cultivate, so plant its own tea trees for the cultivation of tea, rather than just relying on indigenous wild tea trees. So let's go through these two teas. We have Ganlu, often called sweet dew. So this is a first pluck Ganlu, and we've got a first pluck Juyeqing, often called bamboo leaf green or bamboo green. Both of these are very, very highly revered green teas from China. Let's quickly scope them. They're both first pluck, as I said. They're both picked in February. This is the 19th, this is the 20th of February, so very, very close together. Very, very early pluck. They're both from the Laochuan Chunti Zhong variety, so the heirloom original variety, the small leaf variety that grows in this area, so has a lot of history and is perfectly suited to the terroir in these areas. The origin, this one here is from Mengding in Sichuan in China, so the Mengshan, the Meng Mountain. Mengding is made up of I think 5 peaks, and it's a very, very historic area for tea production. This one here comes from Emei, which is in Leshan area of Sichuan in China. So they're from different mountains in Sichuan province. The picking and processing on these are of course both green teas. This is a bud and 1 leaf, maybe a bud and 2 leaves if it's very, very fine leaf, that second leaf. This one is buds only. The processing, it needs to go through a kilgreen process. This one here has a long history. Ganlu Sweet Dew has a very, very long history. We'll talk about the history in a very little bit. And it goes through 3 rounds of charcoal baking and rolling. So you can see it has this sort of very fluffy shape where it's rolled by hand. So it's charcoal roasted and over pans, and then rolled 3 times, and then it's baked. And it's a very, very arduous, long, very traditional process for making this green tea. The Juyeqing or bamboo leaf green is produced in a more modern style. It's a bud only, and apparently they de-hair the buds, so they strip the hairs off the bud, so you can see that it has this sort of very naked look to it, which is a characteristic of Juyeqing. Elevation on this, this one's about 1,400 meters, and this one here is about 1,200 meters. So as I said, they are both high-ticket teas, very, very well-revered green teas from Sichuan province. And this one here is more modern, relative. This one was named in the 1960s, but it was no doubt being produced a little bit before that. So the story goes that a Chinese official went to visit Ermei and went to taste the teas and tasted this tea that was being produced, I believe, by Buddhist monks. That whole area has a lot of history in terms of Buddhism and Taoism, and fell in love with the tea and named it bamboo leaf green. This one here has a longer history. Some say it's around 2,000 years old, so Han Dynasty. And the story behind this is that this may be one of the teas that first brought about the cultivation of tea, so the planting of tea trees. There's a famous Taoist monk in China in the Han Dynasty, sort of between 50 to 200 BC, around that era of time. His name was Wu Li Zhen, and apparently a Taoist monk, and he was, or at least he's being celebrated in China as the first person to plant tea trees, to cultivate tea trees, and then produce this Ganlu tea from, I think, 7 tea trees that was obviously a tribute tea for the royal family. And the royalty in China used this tea, didn't drink the tea themselves, but used this tea in ceremonies, in religious ceremonies, and then other Ganlu was consumed by the royal family, so other Ganlu from outside of these 7 tea trees. And this tea, Ganlu, became well known as a tribute tea in the Tang Dynasty and the Song Dynasty as well. So that's the history of these 2 teas. A much longer history for Ganlu, 2,000 years possibly, but certainly, you know, well over 1,000 years of history. Right, but all of that means nothing if they don't taste good, right? So let's get on with the tasting. I have 90-degree water here, so we're gonna let it cool down a little bit. I'm gonna brew these at about 85 degrees Celsius. And I think brewing parameters on these kinds of teas is very much a matter of personal taste. You can brew them grandpa style. Even though I do like grandpa style, I personally always prefer to take my leaves out of the water. I do think that no matter what, you can overbrew these teas. These teas are extremely forgiving, so you can leave them for long, long periods of steeping time. I would keep the temperature down. 80 degrees for me is a bit too light for these types of bud heavy teas, especially this one here where the armor is quite thick, so you want a little bit more heat. So I'm going to brew these at about 85 degrees. So experiment with temperature. You can do grandpa style. I personally don't enjoy the whole picking leaves out of my mouth. It's very pretty. You can see the leaves bobbing up and down, or the buds bobbing up and down. You'll see that anyway when we brew it in this flute brewer. Or you can brew it gongfu style. And if you're brewing it gongfu style, I would recommend somewhere in the region of 2 to 2.5 grams of leaf per 100 ml of water, and brew for quite long periods of time, sort of 2 minutes as your first brew, and then add a minute, and you can probably brew these for about 5 times. But to be honest with you, after you finished with these leaves, in terms of your main session, you can just stick them and then start brewing grandpa style. I would just pour 80-degree water and leave them, and you've always got this lovely sweet water that you can continue to drink. So I'm just going to allow this TEAWARE to heat up a little bit, and then we're going to be putting in our Mengding Ganlu. Beautiful wispy leaves. I mean, you can see the look of these leaves. Very furry, very light, very fluffy. goes through those 3 rounds of hand rolling and shaping. I'm going to put the lid on that one. So I'm just letting that residual heat of the water heat up the leaves, but they're not touching the water. It's one of the little tricks of the flute brewer. Let's put these to the side. Okay, here we go. First pluck. Boy, do I need this session. I am exhausted, so this is going to be a breath of fresh air. Spring in my nose. Here we go. Oh, one of the difficult things with these first pluck spring teas is that even though they have such a lovely array of aromatics, I sort of don't want to talk that much about the aromatics, because the joy of it is its purity and freshness, and it's like sniffing a dewy morning. You know, yes, you can sort of break it down into its parts, but the overall experience is one of freshness and a sort of renewed hope that spring brings. But I will dive deeper because I know you want me to. There is a creaminess to it. I'm going to say soya milk, sweet soya milk. I would not say it's cut grass so much. Cut grass is a phrase that's often used, and I think is not something that's very desirable in tea. You want that rawness of the green to have been transformed, and so it's warmer. I'm getting a little bit of green acorn, a little bit of sweetened soya milk. A little bit maybe of some sort of grain. Again, it's quite starchy, so that transformation is there. Maybe like porridge oats, malted barley, those sort of notes. Moving a little bit, sort of hay is too yellow, right? It's starchier, sweeter, and a little bit greener than that. Okay, let's compare that to the first pluck Juyeqing. So there are similar notes. I'm still getting warmth. I'm still having that creaminess, those porridge notes, but there's a distinct brightness to this tea. Again, I would not class it as overly green. I would say, despite the way that it looks, which is a stunning looking tea. Yeah, I want to say like lightly sort of roasted bamboo. Bamboo green, so that's, but the green is more about the color, but it's got, as if you've taken a green plant like a bamboo and just heated it up a little bit, just warmed it up a little bit. Maybe a little bit of sugar snap peas, that kind of sweet green rather than an astringent, sappy, raw green leaf aroma. Okay, let's quickly take this out, do this properly since these are high-ticket teas, and pour this away. I'll give it to the frog, even though it's cooled down, so he's not going to change color. Okay, right, let's check the temperature here. Perfect, 85 degrees. Okay, now I am going to put a timer on this, if I can, because I want to brew this properly and I'm going to forget about it. Okay, so I've got a stopwatch on my computer. I'm not going to rinse these teas. I don't feel that you need to rinse these teas. If you want to, you can. Oh, I should smell the drip wet leaf. Okay, so I will quickly rinse these, but very quickly and very little water. So it just sort of goes through, again, goes to the bottom, and the leaves can drain. Okay, let's have a sniff. Ah, okay, so now orchid. Oftentimes with these curly, twisted, green teas, early spring green teas, you get that orchid aroma. But there's a little spice coming through, a little pepperiness. I wouldn't say that it is maybe like touch of black pepper, but very, very light. Orange blossom water, which actually I think tends to have a little pepperiness to it as well. So orchid, orange blossom water, touch of pepper. Another spice coming through is gripe water. And I always forget which botanicals are in gripe water. I want to say caraway seeds. I love caraway seeds. Underused, in my opinion, as an ingredient, has such a particular aroma, and that's there. And that moves me into a bit of a savory note. I'm getting like vegetable broth, but very clean, very clear, very spring vegetable broth. Tiny touch of vanilla, or like again, like a porridgey, but not porridge. It reminds me, flavor notes change as you gain experience. It reminds me of the baby rice that I used to give my daughter, that you mix with a bit of milk. It has a sort of light, creamy starchiness, but that savory note is there, or that brothy note, slightly sort of saline note is there as well. And that is one of the key things that I look for in these spring teas, these early spring pick teas, high ticket teas, because if it doesn't have it, it generally means the length is not going to be there and you're not going to get the sweetness. This, I should say, comes from 55-year-old tea trees. This one I'm not sure, but they say old. I'm going to guess it's around the same sort of age. It's that heirloom variety, that Chuntijiang variety. So, you know, they are from well-established tea trees, and you can smell that in the leaf. All right, let's have a sniff of the Juyeqing. Oh, no, it's very different. Oh, a little bit more mineral. A little bit more nutty. I want to pistachio nuts, but not pistachio nuts that have been overly roasted. Maybe similar to like if you have a pistachio ice cream, more like a raw pistachio nuts, green chestnuts. I am getting again that bamboo, sweet bamboo that's just sort of been warmed up, so it's not too raw. I'm getting the congee sweetened rice thing happening. This was more baby rice. This is a little bit deeper. I'm getting that savory note as well. Oh, what a delicious smell that is. There's something floral as well, but it's not orchid. It reminds me of, I think it's clover flower. Those flowers that you can pick and you just suck and you get that little sweet essence in there, right? That temperature's gone down to 80 degrees, so we're gonna boost that up. And we are going to pour this away. Froggy gets some nice spring goodness. 85, perfect. Okay, so I'm going to brew these at the same time. We're going to brew for 2 minutes, and I'm just going to sort of pour in a circular motion just to sort of agitate the leaves up a little bit, get them moving. I'm not going to cover, so I'm going to start the stopwatch here, and then I'm going to leave about 10 seconds between them. And you're going to see a difference in the look of these. The Juyeqing is going to float right to the top, and then as it starts to extract and the water starts to enter the leaves, they're going to start to drop, and you're going to get that beautiful trademark yin-jen buddy movement of the buds, sort of a vertical movement, whereas the Ganlu sits down. So we're going to brew these for 2 minutes. As I said, I'm very much in need of tea today. You probably see I'm quite exhausted. I managed to pull a muscle in the side of me doing what are they called? I can't remember. What's it called? Where you lie on your back and you move your arms, back crossover. Anyway, I did it without warming up, pulled a muscle. And so the whole of last night, every time I turned, I woke up. So I'm just exhausted today. And these are going to recharge me, I'm sure. Look how stunningly beautiful it is, and this is why I recommend that you brew these in glass. Also, glass dissipates heat, so you're allowing that cooling of the water, so you're not sort of holding the heat too much. That's another reason why I tend to leave the lids off. You don't have to. I mean, I don't think I would notice the difference if the lid was on or off. I've done that test before, and it hasn't made much difference. Or very little at all. I wouldn't be able to do it in a blind tasting. All right, so that's a couple of minutes. Stunningly beautiful. Both incredibly beautiful teas. And you can understand why they're so highly desired in terms of looks by the inner circle of tea lovers out there, green tea lovers, and why people spend big money on these teas. Right, the color of the liquor. The bamboo green, as you'd expect, looks a little bit brighter. They're both very bright teas. They have a very similar sort of color, like a lime juice yellow, yellow green, but more yellow color. But this one has a little touch more green to it, a little bit more of a bright and verdant tint. Okay, here we go. Mung Ding, Ganlu, Sweet Dew. Cheers, everybody. Texture is soft, medium thick, but the softness, the roundness in the mouth, the fact that it starts to affect the sides of my tongue immediately, not with a tingle, but with almost like it's got like a bubble of tea sort of just clinging to it. It sort of has a sort of juiciness that doesn't come from a flooding juiciness, but just almost like a hydrating juiciness to the sides of my tongue. Very soft. Very silky. Does move to a gentle dryness, but considering it's a 2-minute brew with a fair amount of leaf, I mean, so I said they're very, very forgiving teas. Taste on this. The orchid is already very, very strong. In fact, a lot of the notes that I was picking up in the wet leaf, I'm getting orange blossom, I'm getting orchid. You know how chrysanthemum has a slight pepperiness? Again, that pepperiness that comes through, but it's more floral, more herbal, more floral. Still creamy, still got that light soy milk, silken tofu sweetness to it. And it has a green nature, but the green nature is like cooked edamame. So a little bit moving into the nutty, into the warm, whilst and creamy. So nutty, warm, creamy, whilst still being green. So cooked edamame. And that edamame lends a little bit of saltiness and savouriness, which just balances the whole thing out. So whilst you're getting freshness and you're getting sweetness, which we'll talk about in a very little bit because that's one of the main characters of this tea, that slightly savoury note, nothing like the realms of Japanese green teas, but it that slight savory note just accentuates all of the other flavors. And this sweetness that comes, sweet dew, this sweetness, and sweet dew is such a great name for it, which is why we're not going to mess with the name for this one. Sweet dew, that sweetness is pronounced and enduring. It lasts long after you've finished drinking. And from my experience tasting the samples of this tea, you're going to have a sweet taste in your mouth for hours to come after this. And again, that's the real kicker here for these very early spring pick teas. Oftentimes they don't have that, and you want that. If you're paying the price, you want that tea to stay with you, to echo in your mouth for hours afterwards. And this certainly does that. Super sweet. Oh, incredible. The sweetness is like a rock sugar. I wouldn't say it moves into the honey. But it's not just like a white sugar. It has a touch more caramelization than that. A touch more like a raw sugar note to it. Very sweet. Now I don't drink or I don't eat sugar very much, so like that's very pronounced on my tongue because I'm so not used to it. It's like incredibly sweet. So it's got warm, it's got green, it's got savory, it's got sweet, and it's all dancing with each other in this very delicate flavor profile that has complexity as you explore it. But the overarching taste, and it's what I was saying at the beginning, is just comfort and freshness. And you can imagine that this is what you would want, like your laundry, if you hung it outside in the springtime, to sort of smell like. It's just incredible aroma. Okay, but we can't forget this first pluck tea, and I told you it was an indulgent session. So try and reset, try and recalibrate. I still have that sweetness, so I'm gonna have to try and factor that in. But let's dive into this first pluck, Juyeqing. And the first thing that you note is it's more green forward, as you'd expect. But again, and this is one of the things with Juyeqing and these types of very naked looking buds, is that they can oftentimes have excessive rawness and excessive astringency. This doesn't, but you can taste that that it's moving a little bit more into that arena. So you're getting the warmth. I'm getting again, sweetened soya milk, tofus, porridges, creamy, warm. Less flowers, more fruits. And fruits, I would say like green apple. But again, don't imagine this, the acidity of a green apple, just the sort of fragrance of if you sniffed a green apple skin. So you take a green apple and you rub it on you. So it's polished and slightly warm, and you smell it, and you're getting a very bright, invigorating green apple smell. But at the same time, it's still sweet and warm. That's the aroma that's there. Yeah, nashi pear, green apple, that bamboo is still there. And it's sweet as well. Sugar snap peas, I said before, I think that's probably the closest. If this is more edamame, so a bit starchier, a bit warmer. This is more like sugar snap peas, sweet. And the sweetness on this is a little bit more of that bright sort of simpler sweetness that comes from like peas. So they're different, not very different. They're different, and the finish on this one is a little bit drier, only a little bit. Again, extremely forgiving tea. And if you've tried a Juyeqing and it's like, it's made you pucker, you know, in terms of your mouth just puckering up, This is not that. 2-minute brew at 85 degrees, very forgiving. And, you know, it speaks of the quality of the leaf. But it's moving into that a little bit more movement and interest and physicality on the tongue, a little bit more of a tingle on the tongue. There is a flower. I'm not. It's a little bit of a spicier flower. Warmer, rounder, creamier, more edges to this, more fruits, more of a contrast between those green apples and the sugar snap peas, and then this sort of porridgey, grainy, sweetened congee, sweetened rice sort of creaminess. Both spectacular, and that's why we picked them. Gorgeous, gorgeous teas. Right, let's sniff the empty flute brewer. It's very difficult to pick a favorite, and you shouldn't really, because they're both doing their own thing. Right, let's smell the empty. I'm feeling this uplifting energy. One of the things about these teas that I also look for is that whilst the mouth sensation remains comfortable, cool, fresh, sweet, I'm looking for warmth. I don't want a green tea, and I don't know what it is, but there seems to be like a line where there are some of these green teas from Sichuan that somehow like make me feel chilly. This doesn't. This warms me up, just lifts me. Very, very warm and bright. Again, like a sunny, like the first really sunny day of spring. Okay, let's have a sniff of this. Ooh. Touch of coconut, not toasted, raw coconut. Touch of petrichor, so the smell that the earth emits just before it rains, or while it's about to rain, especially during the hotter months. Yeah, a little bit of coconut, a little bit of very light vanilla. And a creaminess as well. It's just like sweetened whipped cream. Yeah. Just very simple sweetened whipped cream, petrichor, touch of that coconut and vanilla. A lovely, lovely smell. Okay. And again, smell of empty gong dabe or empty cup will also reveal very clearly the quality of the tea bushes. Okay. Let's have a smell of this. Again, more fruit. Oh, the fruit is actually very clear to me. Dragon fruit. So dragon fruit has this really interesting contrast of, on the one hand, being watermelon sweet, but on the other hand, having a little tartness, a little edge to it. And that's the joy of a good dragon fruit, apart from the texture of those little seeds, etc. But that the sweetness, and then after you've sort of chewed and swallowed, you get a little tartness, a little acidity. That's there, and then as it cools down, very, very wild honey smell. Oh yeah. Dragon fruit and wild honey. Good. Oh, sweet cream is really coming through now. Spectacular teas, and as I said, what I would recommend you do is just add a minute to each of these, and I'd probably brew these 4 to 5 times, and then after that, I would then probably go to grandpa style with it. So then I would be just hitting it with 90-degree water, letting it sit and just sort of drinking through the day. And it will just continue to give you like a lovely sweet, like a sweet water, like dew, like a dew in a cup. Let's call it that. And so yeah, then you can brew these through the day. They have a remarkable longevity. Again, if you get the right quality, they'll have remarkable longevity considering their delicacy up front. Let's take a quick look at these leaves before we go, so that you can see the difference between the Ganlu processing. Very, very fine leaves. A bud and one leaf. You just sort of see if I can show that. A bud and one leaf there. Okay, now let's get some of this Juyeching. Don't you worry, this is going to be what I'm going to be sipping on for the rest of today. Fat buds, right? Very, very lovely, thick, fat buds with that trademark like pistachio green color. 2 first plucks, small batch. Obviously, if you want to get your hands on some very, very early spring pick tea, then I would highly recommend these 2. And of course, we're going to keep tasting. We're going to just keep rolling through. I'm actually doing this tasting before these teas have arrived. These are the samples, so obviously I'm going to do a tasting when they arrive, but I know the producer it's going to be the same, so that we can release it as soon as we get them. So go check them out, and I hope that you enjoy that taste of spring. That's it, tea heads. Check out our other videos, taste our teas wherever you are in the world by browsing mayleaf.com, and come visit us if you're ever in London. Other than that, I'm Don from Mayleaf. Thank you for being part of the revelation of true tea. Stay away from those tea bags. Keep drinking the supreme stuff and spread the word, because nobody deserves bad tea. Bye.